I would agree. I think that people sometimes when they get into situations like that, that kick or that slap in the face, whatever you want to call it, they give up, and they don't try to fight. They don't try to keep positive. They take that as like you're done, and that's where I think part of the reason why the success that I've had, not only because of my faith, but also the positivity and the mindset, I believe, and I don't know the medical stuff behind it, if there's research behind it, but I really believe that if you attack things with the right mindset, anything in life, I think you can beat it. You can overcome.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the No Have Cakes podcast. My name is Jim Sabellico, and today is a Wednesday long-form episode, and these are my absolute favorite because this is where we sit down and we get real raw and talk to someone who's done some life. And those conversations are generally my favorite because they are real and raw, and they are just authentic to people who've just done some stuff, who've lived the good, the bad, the ugly, just kind of airing it out for you to sit along and listen to. If you are new to this, other formats of the show, Mondays I do a Mindset Monday. That's a positive perspective to help carry you through the week. And Saturdays I do what I call a strategy sprinkle, which is a short, practical, tactical tip to help you level up in both your personal and professional life. Before I get into anything else, I do want to ask if you could just do me a favor. If you find some value out of this conversation, please do me a favor and share it. Hit that subscribe button. The more that we can get these kind of messages out there, the more that we can continue to impact positively in the community. And that makes a difference for me. It makes a difference for our guests. It makes a difference for everyone who interacts with this. So I appreciate you taking the time to be here. And the more you can help us kind of get that message out, we all benefit from. So all that being said, without further ado, what I want to do right now is get into today's conversation with a dear friend of mine, Mr. John Krause. Now, John is someone who I met maybe at this point 3-ish years ago. We'll say that. And this is a man who has shown like such a relentless faith in facing adversity, facing what success looked like, and then finding out that there was more. This is a man who I've seen be super successful in business and then get knocked down. Be super successful in other areas of life and get knocked down. Like, I've seen this man over and over and over again just reach the height of success, only to find, like, boom, you're getting kicked in the shins, change of plans, and, like, every freaking time comes at it with this just, with love, with grace, with just this relentless passion for just continuing to grow. And it's been an inspiration for me just to watch along from the sidelines. And I know from other people who've been involved closely with John, he's just an inspiring person. So to me, it's an honor to have this conversation. John, I love you, brother, and thank you for being here.
Oh man, I love you too. Thanks for the intro. That was awesome. No, and I'm still climbing, man. It's never you're never at the top. You just got to keep pushing. So I'm loving being here. This is great.
Thank you. So if you would just kind of take us through a little bit of your background. I know that you started sort of traditionally going the business route. I believe you went and got the MBA. You did the whole business thing, started the family. Like, take me through early John.
Oh wow, early John. Early John was out of college trying to find his way. Right. I got out of college and went to school for a sport management degree. And to take you back all the way there, I was like, what the heck am I going to do with this degree? And then I figured out, I found a job like at a gym at a front desk. And I thought that's, it was going to be like a little side hustle to make some money to buy a truck or something like that at the time. Little did I know I'd fall passionate about sales and all that. And carried that career, that side of the business in the fitness business. Cause I always loved working out. I played sports in college, played lacrosse. And, it was just natural to me to be in that setting, but I hated sales. I wanted nothing to do with sales. I had the worst mindset or view of a salesman because I thought they were sleazy. And I was like, I'm not that guy. So early me was like fighting that and then realized I loved it. And I loved it because I believed in what I was offering, which was fitness and health. And so I carried that for the next 4 or 5 years. And from there, honestly, I hit the top of the chain in the small company that I was at, and there was nowhere else for me to go. So the owner and I were like, he's like, listen, he's like, there's a GM, but he's not going anywhere. So he's like, I don't know what you want to do. He's like, why don't you look at a couple other industries, And I looked at the mortgage business, and I looked at the pharmaceutical business, and I went all the way up the interview process in the farm business, and never got the nod for the job. It was always me against somebody with experience in the farm business. So I was like, all right, where am I going from here? So, I went down the mortgage path. I was like, well, that seems like a viable option. Now, it was sales, and I was in a time, and this was 2004-ish, and that was a time where there was like a refinance boom, and I'm looking around the office after I got trained up, and I'm like, these guys are raking in the money. They're just sitting there taking applications. Their phone is blowing up. My phone wasn't blowing up, and I had to learn real quick that my phone wasn't blowing up because I wasn't putting in the work to get the phone to blow up. Before, in the gym business, the owners put in the work. They spent the money in the marketing to drive revenue and people through the door for me to sell. And I had to quickly learn, like, okay, how do I do that? So learning that was big for me because I had to get out there and pass out cards and talk to everybody and let everybody that I knew and didn't know understand what I offered. And through time, that kind of went to a good place, and I was successful, doing that. And then the mortgage business, as many know, in 2008 crashed and it burned. And at the time, 2008, we had I left in 2007, going into 2008, because I had already seen the writing on the wall. We had one kid, one on the way, and I think one on the way at the time. And I was like, I'm out. I'm never going to ever do this business again. I can't do this. And even though it was massively successful for me financially, and I loved the job, it was going away, and it went away. The job that I had, which was more on the business side of it, was gone. So I had to pivot. Like, now what? Now what do I do? And then comes in the decision. Well, what do I know? Well, I know the fitness business and I know the mortgage business. What else can I do? So I said, well, what about starting a gym? What about starting a business? And I'm like, yeah. So I talked to a couple of my family members who graciously backed me. We're like, yeah, we'll back you a little bit on that. And come to find out, I went to speak with the former GM of the job that he was never going to leave. He had left since then and started his own health clubs. So I said, I was like, hey, can we meet? Because I want to bounce some ideas off of you and try to figure out how to do this for myself. And he's like, yeah. So lo and behold, in that meeting, he offered me like a partnership with him in his next facility, which I was like, yeah. I'm like, that sounds like the easier path, right? He's already built it. Well, I can just kind of jump and piggyback on and be an owner of a gym and be where I was like, I can be a big shot. Like, I can be an owner in my 20s, like owning a health club. I thought I was kind of, honestly, I thought it was king shit, to be honest with you. And that was one of the things that I had to mature about through time that I didn't know about. So I thought, at that time I was like, well, after years of running fitness businesses, going to the mortgage business, now I realized after opening the blood, sweat, and tears, like building this thing out, doing all the work, now I'm running this facility. Now what do I do? Now I'm kind of a gym manager again. I kind of felt like even though I owned it, which I was a small percentage owner, like 25%, I didn't own it. I was running it. I was the day-to-day manager, operations. I was running it. And I kind of, after a couple of years, I'm like, this is, to me, I'm like, I'm not seeing the profits and the fruit of like what I've built right now. And that was a patience thing, right? Maybe I wasn't patient enough. But I learned so many lessons, Jim, through life. And that was just really the start of it. Like, realizing it now, all these lessons that I learned, like the lack of patience, the guy who really you weren't there yet, that the fact that I had to realize that I had to put in the work to get the business, all that kind of got me to where I am today through many, many bumps in the road. One of those is going and, after the gym business, leaving the gym business, leaving my investment there, but saying, all right, I can do better. I can always do better. So I went into the insurance space. I worked for a big insurance company and started to realize, like, I'm not like a guy that can be really told what to do. I need to be able to do my own thing. And that I didn't understand what that looked like for me. But that was my first snap of that. So I left that space working for a big company and went to work for a small brokerage, which was more entrepreneurial, which I enjoyed, but it wasn't really cutting the mustard. It wasn't making the money that I needed to make. So that's when I jumped, as you said, went and got my MBA. I was like, all right, let me get my wife had just finished her doctorate. I'm like, all right, now I gotta start to level up here. I'll get my MBA, and that'll maybe propel me up the corporate ladder here in Connecticut, maybe with one of the big insurance companies, which I'd interviewed tons for. And again, it was one of those things. I was never the top guy. I was the second guy. So again, a lot of slaps in the face with that. A lot of ego, got kind of smushed down a little bit. Like I thought that I could overcome a lot of those adversities, you can call them. I never really got the nod. I found then I stumbled upon a job that was more entrepreneurial in Hartford, and absolutely fell in love with it. And that was kind of like the stopping point where it was like, all right, I need to be more of like in a space where I can kind of have a lot more freedom,
Yeah. And what I'm hearing you say from that,
what's that?
I was just gonna say what I was hearing as like a recurring theme from all of that history is chasing a definition of success that you thought was what you wanted.
Yeah.
Like chasing the money, chasing the title, chasing the position, chasing the owner status, and ultimately finding out, hey, this is not the thing that you think it's going to be, and ultimately it leads to another life lesson, another hurdle to climb over, and like it's just this recurring thing that you keep, like you're getting places, but sort of like running on a treadmill.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not really getting any further forward. You're just continuing to learn that lesson over and over again.
Right. And I was just adding more things to do. Like, because I knew I could do more. I was just adding, like, I was at that job in Hartford, and I'm like, well, what else can I do on top of this? Like, I to earn more money, push myself forward. I was still kind of chasing things, at that time. That was the time where it was in 2014 where I was diagnosed with leukemia. So that was kind of like the thing that changed the game quite a bit for me. At least started to. At least I thought it did in the beginning, because it was a slap in the face where, all right, I was kind of in a space where I enjoyed the guy that I was working with because, it was just a really cool job, a lot of flexibility, provided a decent income, nothing groundbreaking at all, but a decent income. Family was great. We had 3 kids, and we had found out we had 1 on the way. And then a week later, I went for a physical. The doctor calls me in. He's like, hey, your blood test came back wonky. He's like, get to the ER today, right now. Don't wait till tomorrow. And, that was when I was like, wow. It was like one of those things like, really? Leukemia? Seriously? Okay. All right. Well, let's see what this is all about and, figure out next steps and, try to beat it, and that was some of the questions that I had to the doctor, like early on when I was inpatient, because you had to be inpatient for the first 30 days to try to get into remission. I was like, all right, well, what are my odds? Like, what are the numbers? Everyone wants numbers, statistics. I mean, that's me. I want to know like what my chances are. And his response wasn't what I wanted, but it was good enough. It wasn't like, John, here's what he told me. He's, actually, they didn't tell me this up front was how close I was to actual death. I learned that after I got out of the hospital and started to do my own research, because during that time I was just listening to the doctors and just saying, what do I need to do? And they're like, just sit here. We're going to hammer you with chemo. And the goal is to get into remission. And then, there's maybe some next steps down the road. So what he told me is like, you've got probably about 70% chance to come out of this. And I'm like, all right, 70's good. 90 would have been better, but 70's good. It wasn't 3 or 2 or, you're screwed. So I just kind of took that to, all right, I like those odds. I'm a numbers guy, and let's go to battle. So that's kind of what I did. And, there was a point where, my motivation, my positivity was definitely, out there and shining through, and, I was good. Like the doctors would come in every day and I'd jump up like I'm freaking Superman. Like, let's go, check me out, man. I'm feeling good. Like this chemo that you just hammered me for 7 days, for 24 hours a day for 7 days. I'm good. Like let's rock and roll. Let's get to the finish line here. And that was my attitude like the entire time, because there were days in the beginning that I felt like crap. But then I'd bounce back, and from the outside looking in, it must've been scary for my family to see me kind of like not wanting to talk in bed. But in my mind, I was just like, I just need rest. I just need to sleep. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm dying. I didn't feel like that ever through that process. But the optics must have been terrifying for my family. Um, and then there was a point though through the process where like, and this is something that I didn't know, like chemotherapy, what it's supposed to do for leukemia and blood cancer patients is kill all your cells, and then they eventually come back and build up to like hopefully a non-leukemic, blood. But through that process, you get fevers. And I had thought like, geez, these fevers, what are what is this all about? Like, it's got to end. And this was more toward the end of my 30 days in there. And I'd had these fevers, and they'd come and go, and it really wasn't that big of a deal, other than like it would shake me, like I would physically shake with these fevers. But other than that, I was just like, geez, it's annoying. It was like one of those things. Like, all right, enough. The fever would come, then it would go away, and then it'd be the blood test. They'd have to stick me in the arm a bunch of times to test, make sure there's nothing crazy going on. Nothing ever was. So it got to be kind of annoying. But then it got to be the point where I'm like, all right, in order for me to get out of here, I need to stop having these fevers. Like, but I'm not in control of that. And then there was one night I hadn't had them for a little, maybe like a day or so. There's one night, all of a sudden I felt, and I knew when they were coming on. I could feel the chills come on. I knew when it was coming on. And that was the point where I was like, I can't do this myself. It's like, it's bigger than me. I cannot do this myself. I can be as positive as I want, as strong as I want for the people that are out there. For myself, I can lift myself up, but it's bigger than me. And that's when I was like, okay, God, this is where I gotta talk to you. And that's where I sat down. And it was early on in my stay, my good friend Nick texted me. He's like, hey, John. And I always had I always felt like I had a connection with God. And he's like, just praise Jesus, thank Jesus, and tell him that you love him. He's like, and that's all you need to do. And I was like, oh, thanks, Nick. Like, I was like, I appreciate that. But it was at that moment where I was like, all right, I got to pray to God right now, because this is like bigger than me. And I said that. I'm like, I praise you, and I meant it from my heart. I praise you, Jesus. I thank you, Jesus. And I love you, Jesus. And I said that right there. And from that moment, I get chills right now thinking about it, because that's when I felt it had to be the Holy Spirit come through my body. Like, I felt warmth through my body. The chills were there, and then they were gone. It was that physical of a response. And I knew it. And it wasn't like a question in my mind. I was like, thank you, God. And it was that moment right there. That's where, like, God said, I got you. And then from there, I mean, it was like, just follow the steps and just get out of the hospital and go get your stem cell transplant and have no issues, which that could have killed me too. Have no issues whatsoever. And then go through time and just be grateful that I was even there. So that was like really step one of the process. As you know, there's more steps.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the question it initially gave to me was, where did that positivity come from for you? Like, when you initially mentioned how you had this positive outlook and you were, welcoming your 7 straight days of chemo with open arms and saying, hey, I'm here for it, I'm positive. Like, before you had your God moment, like, where did that level of positivity come from for you?
Well, honestly, I think it really it's just always been there with me and within me. I feel like I've always been a cup half full kind of guy, a cup full blown kind of guy. Yeah, there's always been times where, you get down in the dumps and, you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, that limiting belief you can kind of get. But like, then also the other half of that is, at the time I had 3 kids and I had so much to live for. One on the way, like literally the week before I was diagnosed, we found out we had our 4th on the way. I'm like, it's not killing me. 100%. I made the decision that this is not killing me. And I have so much to live for. I've got this wife and kids and family. And I never, ever was like worried that I was going to die. Never. Not once. I was at first I was shocked. I cried because I was like, man, this sucks. Like, cancer? Really? I was 38. I'm like, really? But then quickly I was just like, let's go to battle. Let's throw down cancer, because I got too much to live for in this life. And that's where my positivity, I think, really came from. It was already there, but that drew it out of me. And I think everyone's got it in them. Everybody's got that will to fight in them. They just have to find the reason why. And I think I found the reason why. And it wasn't for me, it was for them.
Well, how important is it to your current day-to-day to remind yourself of that?
Well,
Like,
I think
I mean,
it's very
clarify the
important.
question. Just to clarify that question a little bit. In the current day-to-day, when you're not getting as extreme moments, right? When you're not being smacked in the face with a cancer diagnosis every day. But there are little things that come up that are going to knock you off course or kind of kick you in the shins again. So like in those smaller moments, how important to you is it to continue to remember that why and continue to fight with that same passion? Because I think sort of what happens there is it's easy to take the pressure off, right? When it doesn't feel as serious, when it doesn't feel as important or life altering for those smaller moments. Like so my question is, when things aren't maybe as extreme as receiving a cancer diagnosis, when it's just, you're looking at the schedule and you got 4 kids, you got to get in 4 different places at the same time, plus your own priorities, plus, trying to date your wife, trying to like do all this stuff. Take me through those moments.
I mean, I think the basic day to day is really for me. It's we just communicate, my wife and I. Like those are the moments where like it's more. None of that stresses me out, and my wife will always ask me, she's like, "This isn't stressing you out, like this stuff," and it just doesn't. And part of that is because of what I went through. Like the little things that maybe should stress me out a little bit more, they don't anymore. Like nearly as much. Yeah, I get stressed. I'd be a liar if I said I don't get stressed out. Things can get to me at times, financial stuff, where you're like, oh man, like here's where we are and here's where we need to be. That can add up. But what I've learned is I'm still learning is the communication portion and chatting it up with my wife and having those conversations to get little things like that off my chest so they don't build up. But honestly, man, like I bring it back to like the 5.5 years that I was cancer free. Like I had gone from being so grateful and like worshiping and praising God for all that He's given me, and really kind of getting through that, but then almost taking it for granted during those 5.5 years of being cancer free, the first 5.5 years. And I know that because I feel like I was kind of living back how I was living before the first cancer diagnosis. And I say first cancer diagnosis because it relapsed in 2020. And that's when shortly the time that we met and it relapsed. And that was a kick to the gut. That was a kick. That was like, if you want to talk about kicks to the gut, that was the kick to the gut that I've ever had. The biggest kick to the gut in my life so far. And it was because I was praising Him for healing me to everybody I talked to. And then I had no issues, Jim, no issues medically. I was clean as a whistle. I was going back yearly to Dana-Farber, slapping my doctor high five. Like, we have a good relationship. And come COVID time, out of the blue, it relapsed. And I had no idea it was that because it was different, and that was a kick to the gut for many things. It was like, well, I was praising you, God. Like, why are you doing this to me again? Like, why? I wasn't blaming God, but I'm like, what is going on? Like, where's my faith now? I questioned my faith a little bit at that time. But then I kind of went back and really thought and prayed on it. Like, all right, there's got to be something more. Like, I know that God doesn't give somebody cancer, but He allows people to go through battles, and I'm like, all right, I have to go through this battle again. And we had 4 kids at the time again. And and I'm like, okay, I've heard horror stories about having to battle this again. And I knew all the research now. I knew how deadly it was. I knew how bad it could get. So I had to face that. And I'm like, how do I do this? Like, okay, I leaned on my faith. So that was the first thing I went back to. I was like, all right, God, if I'm meant to get through this again, you're going to be the one to bring me through it. And I went back to Dana-Farber for another month and got through it, got back into chemo, and got back into remission again, where it was supposed to be harder because the cancer comes back angry. And it did. It came back way angrier. It wasn't just in my blood. It was in my lymph nodes. It was in all throughout my body. It was bad. But I just gave it to him. And that was the kick to the gut where I was like, all right, if I'm going to get through this, it's going to be because I'm supposed to. And I felt like I was supposed to, but I'm like, it's really up to him. And month in the hospital, I was good. And then I went on a trial and I was good all the way up until 2021, where it relapsed again for a third time. And that was a kick to the gut, but not quite as much as the first initial relapse, because I was still getting treatment. I was still on a trial. I was still getting some chemotherapy, even though I was good. But one of the things I'll go back to during the relapse, it was in the when I was in the hospital, I wasn't in a good space at first. I was, kind of like, I was outwardly being like, I got this, like telling the people, like sharing it on social. I got this. I'm going to beat this and I'm going to document it. And I was like, you're going to see good days and you're going to see bad days. But I was trying to put that out there, that positivity that I knew the people in my life needed to see. And it may have been a little fake at that time, because I don't think I was convinced yet that I was going to beat it yet. Not until the day that my doctor walked in to have, and it's simple little stuff, Jim. Little things on a piece of paper that I had to sign. And on the top of it was like, what's the desired outcome of this treatment? And she hand wrote in cure. She wrote cure. You don't cure leukemia with chemo. You don't. Right? You cure it by getting another, there really is no cure. The best chance for a cure is the stem cell transplant that I already had, that I was kind of, that I was maybe going to go through again. But she wrote cure. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, that's it. She's going for a cure. I'm gonna be good. And that next day, I woke up and I was like, boom, let's rock and roll. I was ready to go toe to toe again. So how I get through those day-to-days, it was a long thing because I went through cancer again and had another full stem cell transplant again. All that I've been through gets today's day-to-day struggles to be to the point where I still have to recognize that they're still stressful to other people. And that's a struggle for me, because it's not as stressful to me, because I'm just so damn grateful to be here. And I know that it could change in a freaking second. And I know that for real. So like every day that I get to wake up, it's a true, like, I'm grateful. I'd be a liar to say that things don't bother me from time to time, because they still do. But it quickly turns. Like when I say, all right, God, you got to take this one. And I'm like, all right, I'm good. He's got it. So I've been lucky. I've been lucky to have gone through what I've gone through, because I get to have the perspective that I have now that so many people just don't have, or won't ever get the chance to have, because they haven't walked in my shoes. They've walked in other shoes, and maybe they have what I have because of those walks. But like, I'm lucky. Like, people look at me like, you're freaking nuts. You're full of it too. But I swear to God, my hand on the Bible, I feel like I'm lucky to have gone through what I've gone through. I really am.
Wow. And I do think a large part of that is your outlook on it, like, and how willing you are to live out loud and share that perspective. And I think your willingness to share the journey, the good, the bad, and even to have this conversation right now to talk about, even in the moment when you're trying to be positive and trying to put on that I don't want to call it show, but you're sharing your life, right? The good, the bad, the ugly. Being willing to share that, even when you are not sure of it yourself. I think that gives you a certain amount of power over it, right? Because while you can't necessarily control this thing, you can control your efforts, your actions, your outlook on it. And I think, there have been so many instances you've shared in this, past couple minutes we've been talking about, all the kicks to the gut you've got that have not been in your control, right? So many of them have been things that, you continue to climb and to fight and to push forward, and then you get this kick in the gut that's out of your control. But how you respond to it, right? Your choice in how you respond, I think, has made all the difference. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I think that people sometimes when they get into situations like that, that are that kick or that slap in the face, whatever you want to call it, they give up, and they don't try to fight. They don't try to keep positive. They take that as like you're done, and that's where I think part of the reason why the success that I've had, not only because of my faith, but also the positivity and the mindset, I believe, and I don't know the medical stuff behind it, if there's research behind it, but I really believe that if you attack things with the right mindset, anything in life, I think you can beat it. You can overcome. Like you said, I got to control how I felt, how I responded. That's if I responded negatively and ho hum and poor me, and let me cry for the next 30 days, and like what good would that have done? And it goes back to the Bible. It's like what good would worry do? Like if you worry for 1 second, it doesn't like extend your life. Like I don't know all the verses in the chapters, but I know that I've read that plenty of times, and it's so true. That worry and that stress, it's not good. It's not good. So if you can attack it with the right mindset, anything in life, if you just say, "Oh, I just lost my job," yeah, that stinks. It's terrible. But what can you do right this second to change what happens tomorrow? It's all about right here and your actual actions that you can do. And I think that that's just life. I mean, if you have the right actions, and I hope to teach my kids that, like, it's going to get tough. But if you respond in the right way that you have control over, you're going to have success in everything that you do, because life's not easy. I mean, and it's all levels of not easy. I mean, I had some pretty big high levels of not easy, but not to discount other people's tough times. I mean, there's tough times that everyone goes through. So it's all about how you react. 100%.
Yeah, and I do believe that your kids are learning that from seeing you walk it out. And though the circumstances might be different, so it might not be the same level of kick in the gut, like getting a bad grade on the test or having your boyfriend or girlfriend break up with you or whatever the thing is, like they see the level of positivity and tenacity that you put in, and they see the level of communication that you have with your wife. They see you're walking it out day to day, right? So it gives them that followable example of, what do I do when things get hard, right? I don't just fold and curse the world. Like, all right, sometimes I'll take a minute, an hour a day to just maybe be quiet and be a little bit frustrated, but
Yeah.
gather myself, regroup, and get back at it.
Yeah.
So honor to you for that, man.
Yeah. You know what? And as you say that, I don't do this enough, but I got to honor my wife, because what I went through, and she's like, "John, you're full of it." But like what I went through is so easy compared to what she had to deal with, like at home. Like I don't know if I could have done what she did. Keep that straight face, keep those kids like moving forward, and reassuring them that it's going to be okay. Dad's in a good spot. He's got good doctors, and answering their questions with just enough truth that made them satisfied, and never hiding anything from them, and just holding down the fort for not just one, but more than three battles in the hospital. I was in the hospital more than 3 times. So I got to give honor to her, because without her holding down the fort the way that she did, and I know it wasn't easy. I know it wasn't. I have no idea how hard it was, and I never will. But I got to give honor to her, because she's the reason why I could have success going to bat, because I didn't have to worry about it. In our community too, and I'll give that out there too. And the people that were there for us and our family during those times, our community. I think it's all so important. Like when you go through tough times, man, you got to have a tribe. You got to have a tribe around you that's willing to do and pick you up and lift you up, and that's what we had. So got to throw that out there for the people that kind of were in our corner and continue to be in our corner even now. So even you guys, like all that whole group that we were in, man, like you guys lifted me up during that battle, big time. Even though I was, in those Zooms in my hospital bed, probably sleeping half the time, just having the Zoom on, it was just still like the encouragement and the prayers and all that. Like you need a tribe to go through life with, and I think that's the other thing. You got to find that, whether or not it's one person or 10 or whatever, but you got to have a community no matter what. You can't go it alone. You can't.
Strongly agree. And it's interesting you brought up your wife there, because that was going to be kind of my next question. Just to say, like, in that moment, it's easy to forget that while you're going through what you're going through, right? Your wife in that scenario has to not only be worried herself, right? She's worried for her husband,
Mm-hmm.
someone that you guys were, I think, college sweethearts, right? You've been
Yeah.
together for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, she's got to worry about you, but then she also has to continue to do her day to day routine.
Yeah.
She's got to take care of the kids, and then she also has to pick up the responsibilities of what you would normally be doing at home,
Yeah.
right? So, and it's even the minor things. I was actually having this thought this morning when I was in my pre half cake phase, where I'm out from 3 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night working. Right,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not home, so my wife is essentially a single mom at that point.
Yeah.
Like, I left her to do the garbage, the lawn, to reach things on the top shelf. Like, as dumb as it sounds, but I left the man of the house responsibilities to her, and I didn't give her enough honor for that,
Mm.
right? For picking up those pieces when I wasn't there. And I think a big part of that too is transitioning back, right? So once you get back home, once you start to be able to kind of have those interactions again and take on the responsibilities, how do you manage that part? Because now you have to kind of go back to your traditional roles and ease the pressure a little bit, and kind of find what that new normal looks like.
Yeah. I mean, it's my wife's a badass. First of all, she'll be the first one to grab the lawnmower and go mow the lawn. I mean, she doesn't sit still. But like for all that stuff, it's like just getting back to being together. Like all the other stuff is just like the work around the house and the sharing of the responsibilities. She carries most of the load. She always has. And but but at the end of the day, I mean, it's just the fact that I think that we're all so grateful to be all in the same house, that all the other stuff is like, yeah, there's stresses that go on through life and through our life of scheduling and running around, and we're grateful because we both have pretty flexible gigs. Like I own my own business. I don't have to report. I'm in my home office. Like she has a pretty flexible job, so we really share a lot of roles, like with the kids and all that stuff, like picking up and dropping off. She does a lot of picking up and dropping off. I do some, but it's communication. It's just being grateful to have everyone in the same house. And I think oftentimes she will sit back and every once in a while remind herself, like, all right, this stuff's going on, but it's been so much worse in the past. So let's just get through this, and understand how it's been worse, and we got to be happy where we are right now.
Yeah, I think there's a large element too of, as you continue to go through those things together, like it grows you closer, right? You
Yeah.
go through these experiences, and you start to learn how strong you are individually and how much you're capable of. That had you not been put in that scenario, you would not have even realized, like, the strength that you really have.
Right.
And I think it's awesome to be able to endure that together and support each other through that, and then be able to stand there and say, hey, look at what we did. Like, to give each other honor, and to respect and appreciate, not sit there and be frustrated at the other person because, oh, I had to do this because you didn't do that. But to be able to look back and be grateful for the experience. I think
Right.
that's
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah. And the coolest thing that came out of it, like, after my relapse, because I told you, I was searching. I'm like, all right, God, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I know, like, if I get through this, like, what am I learning here? What am I doing? Like, I'm a doer. I need to figure out, like, all right, what's my next step? So I was searching and searching, and I got out of the hospital. This was after the first relapse, and we were at home and we were chatting about, like, we had done like a t-shirt fundraiser thing, because people wanted like this Team John t-shirt, because the first time when I got out, we did a bunch of golf tournaments for the Jimmy Fund, which is Dana Farber's fundraising arm. So people wanted these Team John shirts that they're like, oh, to support and wear it. So we didn't have them, and my wife's like, I'm not freaking gonna be delivering or shipping out t-shirts, John. She's like, I can't do that. Like, I'm like, no, you can't. Her cousin set up like one of those custom ink things, and a bunch of people got t-shirts, and we raised a couple bucks, which was helpful for the family during that time. And when I got out that summer, we were talking about maybe the next tournament that we were going to do for the Jimmy Fund. And she's like, oh, we should use that, that same company. And then whatever, funds we raise, that can go to the foundation. And I'm like, oh, foundation. As soon as she said foundation, that word hit me like a freaking jolt. We don't have a foundation. But we freaking should. And I'm like, that's what we got to do. Thank you, God. Like that, it was at that second. I'm like, babe, we need to do a charity. We need to start a 501c3. That's what we need to do. We need to help people. I'm like, I have no idea who we're going to help, but we need to help people. And she's like, okay, you're crazy, but yeah, okay. She was like, and she was on board. And I'm like, and that's how we started our charity. It was from that moment. I felt like that was God saying, this is your next step, man. Go help more people, And so we started Team John Foundation in 2020. And yeah, so it's just, just following and honoring God every moment we get. And I feel like that's truly what I was led to do, to raise money to help people that fall on sudden crisis, that when it hits the fan and they can't go to work, they're in a hospital, or somebody, unfortunately passes away and leaves a loved one by themselves. Like, we get to go in there and help them out. And that's the coolest thing ever. Like, to be able to say, all right, yeah, we can help you. And it's not big money yet, but that's why we got to raise money, right? And we got to raise funds. That's why we still do the tournament and stuff like that. So now that's one of the coolest things. Now we get to kind of do that together. One of the things when I first got out of the hospital in 2015, I tackled everything. I jumped on everything. I jumped on the Jimmy Fund golf tournament stuff. I started doing that. I jumped into Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I started, raising money for them. And she was just like, geez, you got to relax a little bit. Like, you got to calm it down a hair and give yourself a little grace. But I felt like I had a calling to do more. And then, even when we started the charity, she's like, even now she's like, you have another event coming up. She's like, okay, but she's all in. She's with me side by side, and we're doing this together. And that's the cool thing, is it's just starting, and it's 2 years in, 3 years. Well, no, it'll be 4 years in this year, but we're just starting, and we're going to be able to do more and more and more. And we get to do it together. We get to lead our kids with that and show our kids like the power of helping other people. It's just really cool, man. So again, all this stuff ties to, so many great things that we get to do.
Yeah. And how awesome is it that now you get to lead this, all these examples for your kids, right?
Yeah.
To be able to show them all this positive stuff, and like, hey, when life gives you lemons, like, here's what you can do with it, right? Yeah. You can either complain about it, or now look at all the blessings in your life, from your relationship, from the foundation, from all these different things that now have come from this situation, which could have been, this big negative thing in your life where you cursed every day, but now you turned it into all these blessings that are continuing to multiply and to affect other families in such a positive way.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun. No doubt about it.
That's awesome. So I do have two questions for you, if I could, before we wrap up.
Yep.
My first question is going to be, for someone who's facing that kick to the gut, the adversity, like, what advice would you give them in how to start today with just what's the next move forward? Like, when you get that news, or that, that kick in the gut, right, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
What is your go-to for how to reset and how to move forward?
Well, I think we talked about it a little bit, but it comes down to, you're in control of your next move. Like, as a person, like, you get to, all right, this happened. Now what? You can go left, or you can go right. You can go left, which is that negative side of a ho-hum, and think about all the bad things and the negative things and the blame and the pointing fingers, and this happened because of this person or that person. Or you could say, well, that stinks, but let me figure it out. Let me try to figure out how to pivot from that point and make something out of it, or change it. You have to look at it as like, all right, this is just the direction that I have to go in, and figure out the best way forward for you. And I think that's really the mindset you have to. Yeah, you're going to have a time where it's going to hurt, and you may be upset about whatever happens, and you deal with it because you want to deal with that, right? You want to embrace those emotions, but then you got to move on, and you got to move on quickly, right? And it's all about, you get to make that decision. Like, as a person, like, okay, I could be this way or I could be this way. I'm going to choose being positive. I'm going to choose to figure a solution out to move forward. And to me, it sounds so simple because I've had to do it in various situations. It's not that simple, but if you can get yourself to do that, you'll realize quickly that the outcomes change quicker, and there's probably a bigger reason why that happened. And you can just look at that down the road and understanding like, all right, I don't know it yet. I don't understand why. I don't need to know why right now. I don't need to know why this is happening right now. But what can I do from this outcome? What can I create? What can I change? How can my mindset kind of move to the other way in the positive way?
Yeah, I love that. And especially, those two simple words you use there of now what? Like, I think those two simple words just to apply when you're in that situation, when no matter what the thing is, to be able to sit there and say, now what?
Yeah.
Like, it gives you the freedom to say, all right, cool, it is what it is. Like, I can't change it, but what can I do now?
Right.
And that's awesome advice. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, man. You got it.
So my last question for you, if we're celebrating life together, what is your go-to cake choice?
My go-to cake choice?
Yes.
Ooh, I would say it would have, well, that's a tough one. Celebrating life. So that's a big deal. Celebrating life is a big deal. I would say it would have to be a chocolate peanut butter cake. Yep. Chocolate cake, peanut butter frosting. Hands down.
All right. I'm with you on that 100%. It's an excellent choice. So we'll have to share some of that in the near future.
That sounds like a plan, brother.
Good. So all that being said, again, I just wanted to thank you for your time and for sharing so much of your background and your story and all that. The good, the bad, the ugly, as we said. I appreciate it. I give you a lot of honor and respect for obviously fighting the fights that you've fought with such a positive attitude and continuing to just be a beacon of light for other people. It makes a big difference. So if no one has said thank you in a while, I just want to say thank you for you being you and continuing to just be that beacon, because it makes a bigger difference than you realize. And
I appreciate it, man. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it.
For that. Any final words before we head off?
No, it's it's one of those things where just being on a show like this, being able to share what I've gone through in my mindset and kind of where I am today, it's honestly one of, like, I believe my life's missions, to be able to get up here and impact others' lives. So I guess the final thought is what can you do today to impact somebody else's life? Figure out how you can make a change for the better in somebody's life. That's kind of what my mission is. So hopefully somebody out there in your audience can do the same.
I love that. Well, I can't top that. So